The world tilted. One moment, Saraphina stood at the tower's edge, her howl of joy echoing across the moonlit kingdom. The next, her sister's hand, warm and reassuring just seconds before, became a fist against her spine. The push. Time fractured into crystalline shards. Wind screamed past her ears as the ground rushed up to meet her. Her wolf howled in panic, clawing desperately at her consciousness, trying to force the shift. But shock had frozen her limbs, locked her bones. The tower's stone face blurred past. 30 feet, 50, 70, Matilda. The name burned through her mind as understanding crashed over her harder than the impact that followed. Her sister, her beloved elder sister who had just smiled and promised to stand beside her always, had pushed her. The ground met her with brutal finality. Pain exploded through every nerve, white-hot and absolute. Her wolf's song cut off mid-note, leaving only terrible, empty silence. Darkness swallowed her whole. 2 weeks earlier, Saraphina stood before the gilt mirror in her chambers, barely recognizing the woman reflected back. Silver thread caught candlelight in the ceremonial robe draped across her shoulders, making her shimmer like starlight given form. The seamstresses fussed around her hem, their weathered hands smoothing fabric that cost more than most pack members earned in a year. "You look like the moon herself decided to take mortal form," Matilda said from where she lounged on the bed, her dark hair spilling across embroidered pillows. Pride gleamed in her eyes, or something that looked enough like pride that Saraphina's wolf settled contentedly. "Tomorrow you'll be crowned queen. Father would be so proud." The mention of their father sent a pang through Saraphina's chest. 3 months since the fever had taken the Alpha King, and the wound still felt fresh. She touched the mourning band on her wrist, the black silk a stark contrast to the silver splendor surrounding her. "I don't know if I'm ready." The words escaped before she could stop them. The seamstresses pretended not to hear, but their hands stilled for a fraction of a second. Matilda sat up, her expression softening. "You were born ready, little sister." Father saw it. The council saw it. Even I see it, though it took me time to accept. Saraphina turned from the mirror, careful not to disturb the seamstress's work. "You should have been chosen. You're older, more experienced, and you make better choices." Matilda's smile held an edge Saraphina couldn't quite read. "You think with your heart and your head. I think with my pride." She stood, crossing to take Saraphina's hands. "I won't lie. When Father announced his decision, I hated you for it. Hated that you were chosen, that you were loved, that everything came so easily to you." The confession hit like a physical blow. "Matilda," "Let me finish." Her sister's grip tightened. "I hated you, and then I watched you agonize over every decision, lose sleep over the welfare of wolves you'd never met, fight the council to protect the weakest among us. And I realized Father was right. You have something I don't. You genuinely care. Not because you want to be loved in return, but because you can't help it." She released Saraphina's hands, stepping back. "So no, little sister. The throne is yours, and I'll stand beside you. Always." Warmth flooded Saraphina's chest, and her wolf rumbled with contentment. This was how it should be. Sisters united, stronger together than apart. If only Edward were here to share this moment. As if reading her thoughts, Matilda's smile turned knowing. "He's probably wearing a path in the stone, pacing outside. Shall I fetch him?" "No." Saraphina's cheeks heated. "The coronation is tomorrow. It's bad luck to see him tonight." Superstitious nonsense. But Matilda's eyes gleamed with affection. "Though I suppose it makes the reunion sweeter. He'll barely be able to contain himself when he sees you in this." She gestured at the ceremonial robe. Just thinking about Edward made Saraphina's wolf stir with longing. Her mate. Her anchor. Even separated by palace walls, she felt him. That invisible thread connecting their souls, humming with his presence. His scent lingered in her memory. Pine and earth, wood smoke and wild wind. When he touched her, her wolf sang. When he held her, the world made sense. "You're blushing," Matilda teased. "I am not." "Your Highnesses," one of the seamstresses interrupted gently. "We're finished." Saraphina glanced down. The robe fit perfectly, the silver embroidery depicting the history of their pack. Wolves running through forests, standing victorious in battles, protecting pups beneath ancient trees. Tomorrow she would wear this while the crown was placed on her head. Tomorrow she would become queen, with Edward as her alpha beside her. Tomorrow felt impossibly far away. "Come," Matilda said, already moving toward the door. "I'm too restless to sleep, and you clearly are too. Walk with me like we used to when we were young." They dismissed the seamstresses with generous tips, then slipped into the moonlit corridors. The palace slept around them, quiet except for the distant sounds of guards changing watch. Their footsteps echoed off stone walls as they climbed higher, their laughter soft and familiar. "Remember when we used to sneak out here after bedtime?" Matilda asked as they ascended the spiral stairs to the great tower. "Father would be furious if he caught us." "He never did, though." Saraphina's chest tightened with memory. "He always knew, Mother told me years later. He just pretended not to notice because he liked that we were close." "We were insufferable," Matilda agreed, pushing open the tower door. Night air rushed in, cool and crisp, carrying the scent of the kingdom below. Wood smoke from hearth fires, the green smell of forests, the distant mineral tang of the river. Saraphina stepped onto the tower's viewing platform, and her breath caught. The kingdom stretched before them, bathed in silver moonlight. Thousands of homes, their windows glowing like earthbound stars. Beyond them, the forest rose dark and mysterious, ancient trees standing sentinel. And further still, mountains climbed toward the sky, their peaks crowned with eternal snow. "Tomorrow all of this will be yours to protect," Matilda said quietly, joining her at the stone balustrade. The weight of it settled over Saraphina's shoulders. "What if I fail them? What if I'm not strong enough, wise enough?" "Stop." Matilda's hand covered hers on the cold stone. "You were made for this, Saraphina. Father knew it. The council knows it. Edward knows it." She paused. "And despite my jealousy, I know it too." Saraphina turned to face her sister fully. "It's not too late, Matilda. You're firstborn. The throne is rightfully yours. If we go to the council together." "No." The word was firm, but not unkind. "I meant what I said earlier. I was angry, bitter even, but I've had time to think. You'll be a better queen than I could ever be. You see people, truly see them. I see chess pieces." She squeezed Saraphina's hand. "Let me stand beside you instead. Let me be the sister who supports rather than the queen who rules. I think I'll be better at it." Relief and love tangled in Saraphina's chest, so intense her eyes burned. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," Matilda said with a laugh, "but you're stuck with me anyway." Saraphina pulled her into a fierce hug, breathing in her sister's familiar scent. Rose oil and parchment ink, the lavender soap she preferred. "Thank you," she whispered, "for understanding, for staying, for being my sister." When they separated, Matilda's eyes were bright. "Now, are you going to howl at that moon or not? Tomorrow you're a queen, but tonight you're still just a wolf who likes to make noise." Joy bubbled up, sudden and overwhelming. Saraphina moved closer to the balustrade, tilted her head back, and let her wolf rise to the surface. The howl that emerged was pure and strong, echoing across the sleeping kingdom. A promise, a prayer, a celebration. Her wolf sang with anticipation. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow she would take her father's place. Tomorrow she would bind her life to Edward's in front of the entire pack. Tomorrow, pressure against her spine. Hard, deliberate. Push. The howl cut off. The world tilted. Matilda's hand, her sister's hand, shoved her forward with enough force that her feet left the stone. Time splintered. Saraphina's arms windmilled, grasping at air, at stone, at anything. Her wolf screamed, trying to force the shift, but shock had paralyzed her. She caught one glimpse of Matilda's face as she fell, not horrified, not grief-stricken, determined. The tower's face rushed past. Wind roared in her ears, tearing the breath from her lungs. Her wolf howled in terror, the sound trapped inside her skull. She tried to shift, tried to do something, but her body wouldn't respond. Edward. His name was a prayer, a goodbye, a desperate wish. The ground materialized from darkness, rough stone at the tower's base, unforgiving and absolute. Impact shattered thought. Pain consumed everything, bones breaking, organs rupturing, her wolf's agonized cry cutting off into devastating silence. Darkness rushed in from all sides, thick and suffocating. The last thing she felt before oblivion claimed her was cold stone beneath her broken body, and the phantom warmth of her sister's hand releasing hers. Consciousness returned in fragments. First came scent. Lavender and yarrow. The bitter tang of wolfsbane carefully measured for healing rather than harm. Herb smoke and old wood, candle wax and clean linen. Then sensation. Softness beneath her, the whisper of blankets against skin. Warmth from a nearby fire, and pain, God's the pain. It lived in her bones, her muscles, every breath a reminder that she shouldn't be breathing at all. Her wolf was silent. That realization brought true panic. Saraphina tried to reach for her other half, that constant presence that had been with her since her first shift at 13. Nothing answered. The space where her wolf should be felt hollow, empty, terrifyingly void. No, no, please. You're awake. The voice was male, rough with exhaustion and surprise. Footsteps approached, and Saraphina forced her eyes open. Candlelight swam into focus, revealing a small cottage with herbs hanging from the rafters. A man stood beside the bed, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair pulled back from a face that might have been handsome if not for the scars cutting across his left cheek, and the weariness etched around his eyes. Those eyes were pale gray, watching her with an intensity that made her wolf. Nothing. Her wolf didn't respond at all. Easy, the man said, holding up calloused hands. You're safe. You're in my pack settlement, about 2 days' journey from... He paused. From where we found you. Memory crashed back. The tower, the push, the fall, Matilda. Saraphina tried to speak, but her throat was dry as parchment. The man, he moved with the careful control of an alpha, reached for a cup on the bedside table, helping her drink. Water had never tasted so sweet. My name is Jaruis, he said, setting the cup aside. My patrol found you 2 weeks ago at the base of the cliffs. You shouldn't have survived that fall. No one survives a fall like that. My wolf, Saraphina managed, her voice cracked and raw. I can't feel my wolf. Jaruis's expression gentled with understanding. The trauma was severe. She's dormant, not gone. I've seen it before in wolves who survive the unsurvivable. She's healing, same as your body. Give her time. Time? How much time did she have before... What day is it? The question came out desperate. The 18th day of the silver moon. 2 weeks and 2 days since she fell. The coronation would have happened a week ago. By now, the kingdom believed her dead. Edward believed her dead. And Matilda? Matilda had what she wanted. Pain lanced through Saraphina's chest, sharper than any physical wound. Her sister had smiled at her, hugged her, promised to stand beside her always, and then she'd pushed. Why? You should rest, Jaruis said, moving toward the door. You've been through hell, and you'll need your strength for what comes next. What comes next? He paused in the doorway, his scarred face unreadable. Healing. And then if you survive, decide whether you want to stay or return to whatever you're running from. He left before she could tell him she wasn't running from anything. She'd been thrown away like refuse, discarded by the one person she'd trusted most in the world. Alone in the cottage, Saraphina closed her eyes and reached again for her wolf. The silence that answered felt like mourning. Days bled together in a haze of pain and healing herbs. Jarui tended her with surprising gentleness for a man who looked like he'd been forged in violence. He changed her bandages, brought her strengthening broths, helped her sit up when her body screamed in protest. He asked no questions about where she came from or why she'd fallen, though curiosity lived in his gray eyes. As her body slowly knit itself back together, Saraphina watched the world through the cottage window. The settlement was small, maybe 50 wolves if that. Children played in the dirt between ramshackle homes, their laughter thin and their bodies too lean. Women mended clothes that had been mended a dozen times before, their faces lined with worry. Men trained with makeshift weapons, their movements speaking of desperation rather than skill. These were not prosperous wolves, these were survivors. "We were banished 5 years ago," Jaruis said one evening, catching her watching. He sat in the chair beside her bed, sharpening a blade with methodical strokes. "My pack and I, we killed 3 nobles who were enslaving wolves from the southern territories, working them to death in their mines." Saraphina's attention sharpened. She remembered hearing about that. Whispered conversations between her father and his council. Debates about justice and mercy. "The nobility demanded our heads," Jaruis continued, his voice flat. "Alpha King Garrett spared us instead, banished us to the wastelands rather than execute us." He looked up, meeting her eyes. It was mercy, even if it doesn't always feel that way. Alpha King Garrett. Her father. The words stuck in Saraphina's throat. She wanted to tell him, to say that her father had been a good man, that he'd agonized over that decision, that he'd fought the council for weeks to find a middle ground between justice for the enslaved and punishment for murder. But revealing who she was meant revealing what she'd lost. And that wound was still too raw. "The nobles you killed," she said instead, her voice stronger than it had been days ago. "They deserved it? Does it matter?" Jaruis's smile was bitter. Dead is dead. Justice and murder look the same from certain angles. "It matters," Saraphina insisted. "There's a difference between killing from cruelty and killing to protect the innocent." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe respect. "The nobles kept 63 wolves in those mines. Men, women, children. We freed them all before we left. If that makes us murderers, then I'll wear the name." Her wolf stirred. It was faint. Barely a whisper of sensation. But it was there. After days of terrifying silence, that small flicker of consciousness felt like salvation. Over the following days, her wolf's presence grew stronger, though still muted, as if she were calling from behind thick walls rather than residing in Saraphina's bones. But it was progress. Her body healed faster with her wolf stirring, bones knitting, bruises fading from purple to yellow to nothing. And as her body healed, her mind catalogued everything she observed. The settlement's defenses were inadequate. A few stakes driven into the ground, some basic trenches, nothing that would stop a determined attack. Food stores were dangerously low. The children's hollow cheeks spoke of rationing that bordered on starvation. And the weapons the men trained with were pathetic. Rusted swords, cracked shields, dulled axes that would break in real combat. "Rogues attack us regularly," Jaruis explained when she asked. He sat across from her as she took her first tentative steps around the cottage, his hand hovering near her elbow in case she fell. "They steal our supplies, sometimes our people. We fight them off, but barely. It's only a matter of time before—" A howl split the air. Not joy, not greeting, warning. Jaruis was moving before the sound faded, grabbing weapons from beside the door. "Stay here," he ordered, then was gone. Saraphina's wolf snarled, pushing against her consciousness with sudden fury. Protect, defend, fight. She shouldn't. She was barely healed, still weak, her wolf only partially present. Going out there would be suicide. She went anyway. The evening air hit her like a slap, cold and sharp with the scent of violence. Jaruis's pack had formed a defensive line at the settlement's edge, facing a group of rogues, 15, maybe 20, their eyes wild and their lips pulled back in snarls. These weren't organized warriors. They were starving predators who'd found easy prey. The attack came like a breaking wave. Saraphina watched from the cottage doorway as rogues crashed into the defensive line. Jaruis fought like a demon, his blade singing through the air, but his pack was badly trained and badly armed. A woman went down, claws raking across her shoulder. A man stumbled, overwhelmed by 2 rogues at once. The children were screaming. Saraphina's wolf roared to full consciousness, and this time, she didn't fight it. The shift came harder than it should have, her body still healing, but she forced it through anyway. Bones cracked and reformed, fur erupted across her skin. Her senses sharpened until she could taste blood on the wind, hear individual heartbeats in the chaos. When she bounded from the cottage on 4 legs, several wolves faltered. Her wolf was smaller than she should be, still recovering, but fury made her fast. She hit the first rogue like a thunderbolt, teeth finding his throat before he could react. Hot blood flooded her mouth. She released him and moved to the next, claws tearing through flesh, her wolf singing with savage joy. Protect, defend, these are ours now. The battle was brutal and quick. With Saraphina fighting beside them, the tide turned. Rogues who'd been confident in their numbers found themselves outmatched. When the last of them fled into the darkness, yipping in pain and terror, silence fell over the settlement. Saraphina shifted back to human form, swaying on her feet. Blood, not hers, dripped from her hands. Her body screamed in protest, wounds that had barely healed threatening to tear open again. Jaruis caught her before she fell. "You're insane," he said, but there was awe in his voice. "You're barely healed and you just—" He shook his head, steadying her. "What are you? A fallen queen, a betrayed sister, a mate separated from her bond. Someone who's tired of watching children go hungry," she said instead. Around them, the pack had gone still. Women clutched their children, staring at her. Men leaned on their weapons, expressions caught between shock and something that looked like hope. "The defenses are wrong," Saraphina continued, her voice gaining strength. "The training is inadequate. The weapons are garbage. If you want to survive, things need to change." "And you think you can change them?" Jaruis asked. Not challenging, curious. "I know I can." The certainty in her words surprised even her. "If you'll trust me." He studied her for a long moment, then glanced at his pack. They were listening, hanging on every word. When he looked back at Saraphina, his scarred face held a new expression. Respect. "Who are you?" he asked again. She thought of her father, who'd taught her to lead with wisdom and strength. She thought of Edward, whose faith in her had never wavered. She thought of Matilda, who'd smiled and pushed. "I'm a refugee from a destroyed pack," she lied smoothly. "But I was raised by an alpha who believed in protecting the weak. And I won't watch anyone else suffer if I can prevent it." Jaruis extended his hand. "Then welcome to our pack, refugee, though I suspect there's more to your story than you're telling. There was. Gods, there was so much more." But as Saraphina shook his hand and felt her wolf settle with satisfaction, she knew the full truth could wait. These people needed her now, needed someone who could teach them to survive. She could fall apart over her sister's betrayal later. She could mourn her stolen crown and separated mate after these children's bellies were full, and the rogues learned to fear this settlement. Survival first. Grief later. That night, After the wounded were tended and the dead rogues burned, Saraphina sat alone in the cottage. She touched her throat where Edward's mating mark should pulse with warmth, connecting her to him across any distance. She felt nothing. Not because the bond was broken, mating bonds didn't break except in death, but because distance and trauma had muted it to barely a whisper. Somewhere out there, Edward was alive. Did he grieve for her? Search for her? Or had he moved on, believing she was dead? Her fingers moved to her chest, to the place where her sister's hand had pressed before shoving. Matilda had smiled, had hugged her, had promised loyalty and love, and then had pushed her to her death. Why? The question would haunt her through the days to come. But tonight, exhausted and aching, Saraphina let herself feel it fully. The betrayal, the loss, the shattering of everything she'd believed about the one person she'd trusted most. Her sister was a murderer, and Saraphina had survived. The question now was what she would do about it. But that answer, she knew, would take time to discover. First, she had a pack to protect and rogues to defeat. First, she had to become strong again. Then, maybe then, she could think about reclaiming what had been stolen from her, if she wanted it back at all. Outside, wolves howled to the moon, and Saraphina's wolf answered. Weak but present, damaged but healing. Surviving. The crown was heavier than Matilda had imagined, gold pressed against her temples, each jewel a reminder of the price she'd paid. She sat on the throne, her throne now, and felt nothing but the weight. The council chamber stretched before her, filled with nobles whose eyes held questions they no longer dared voice. Her father's seat, her sister's birthright, hers by murder. Beside the throne stood Arian, her mate. He was everything a queen could want in appearance, powerfully built, with shoulders broad enough to carry kingdoms and golden eyes that tracked her every movement with devastating devotion. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing a face that would have been beautiful if not for the tension carved into every line. He loved her. Gods help him, he loved her with an intensity that should have filled the hollow space in her chest. It didn't. Because her gaze kept drifting to the empty space where Edward should stand, where Saraphina's mate should be positioned as Alpha King, ruling beside her. That space mocked her with its vacancy, reminded her that everything she'd done, the push, the lies, the coronation built on her sister's corpse, had gained her nothing of what she truly wanted. Your Majesty, Lord Brennan said, his voice pulling her from thoughts that circled like vultures. The elderly noble stood with the support of his cane, his white beard trembling with emotion. It has been 3 weeks since Princess Saraphina's disappearance. The people demand closure. We must continue the search, recover her body, give her proper funeral rites. Matilda felt Arian tense beside her. The other nobles murmured agreement, their grief genuine. Of course it was. Saraphina had been beloved, kind, thoughtful, everything Matilda could never be. The search is ended, Matilda said, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade through silk. Silence crashed over the chamber. Lord Brennan's face drained of color. Your Majesty, surely... My sister is dead. The words tasted like ash. She fell from the great tower. No one survives such a fall. We've searched for 3 weeks and found nothing. The kingdom cannot afford to spare warriors and resources on a corpse that animals have likely scattered across the wasteland. The cruelty of it shocked even her. She watched nobles flinch, saw grief transform into horror, and felt a savage satisfaction that at least they were feeling something directed at her, even if it was disgust. That is your sister you speak of, Lord Brennan said, his voice shaking. The rightful queen. Your father's chosen heir. She deserves nothing. Matilda stood, her wolf surging forward, pressing against her control. She is dead. I am queen now, and I will not gamble this kingdom's security because you're all too sentimental to accept reality. This is not sentiment, Your Majesty. This is tradition. This is respect. This is enough. The word cracked like a whip. Lord Brennan opened his mouth to continue, and Matilda felt something snap inside her. Arian, her mate moved with predatory grace, crossing the distance to Lord Brennan in 3 strides. The old man barely had time to gasp before Arian's hand closed around his throat, lifting him off the ground. Not squeezing hard enough to kill, not yet, but the threat was explicit. The Queen has spoken, Arian said, his voice empty of emotion. Will you defy her? Matilda watched the old man's face turn purple, watched his legs kick uselessly, and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just hollow emptiness where her humanity should be. Arian, she said quietly, release him. He did, letting Lord Brennan crumple to the floor, gasping. The other nobles had gone pale, understanding crystallizing in their eyes. This was not Garrett's gentle rule. This was something darker. The search is ended, Matilda repeated. Anyone who questions this decision will join my sister at the bottom of those cliffs. Council dismissed. They fled like rabbits from wolves. When the chamber emptied, Matilda sank back onto the throne, suddenly exhausted. Arian returned to his position beside her, his face carefully blank. But she felt his wolf's anguish through their mating bond. Disgust at what he'd done. Horror at what he'd become. You didn't have to, she said, not looking at him. Yes, I did. His voice was hollow. You're my queen, my mate. I would do anything. Except be him. The words escaped before she could stop them. Arian went still. Edward. Don't say his name. Matilda closed her eyes, but all she saw was Edward's face, strong and honest, with eyes that looked at Saraphina like she hung the moon. He'd never looked at Matilda that way. Never would. Because Saraphina had been there first, shining so brightly that Matilda had lived in permanent shadow. Your Majesty, Arian said carefully, Edward is in the dungeons. He grieves for your sister. Perhaps if you gave him time. Time won't change anything. Matilda stood, her crown heavy enough to snap her neck. He'll never choose me. Not while her ghost stands between us. Then let him go. Send him away. Banish him, anything but no. The word was absolute. If I can't have his love, I'll have his presence, even if I have to chain him in darkness for the rest of his life. She left before Arian could respond, before she could see the heartbreak in his golden eyes. The dungeons smelled of damp stone and despair. Edward heard her coming, her footsteps echoing down the spiral stairs, the rustle of her gown against stone. He didn't bother looking up when she appeared at the cell bars. The silver chains binding his wrists burned constantly, suppressing his wolf, leaving him hollow and human in the worst way. You look terrible, Matilda said. He finally raised his head. She stood in full royal regalia, crown gleaming, looking every inch the queen. But her eyes held a madness he'd never seen before, desperate and hungry and utterly broken. Is that why you came? His voice was hoarse from disuse. To observe your handiwork? I came to give you a choice. She moved closer, her fingers wrapping around the bars. Accept me as your queen, as your mate. Forget Saraphina and stand beside me. Edward laughed, the sound scraping his throat raw. You murdered her. She felt. You pushed her. He stood, chains rattling, and moved to face her directly. I know you did. I felt it through the bond. Her terror, her betrayal, her pain as she hit the ground. And then nothing, just silence. Matilda's composure cracked. She was going to take everything. The throne, the kingdom, you, all of it would have been hers while I stood in shadow forever. So you killed her. The words were flat, accusatory. You killed your own sister because you couldn't stand being second. I freed us both. Matilda's hands tightened on the bars until her knuckles went white. She would have been miserable as queen, agonizing over every decision, carrying the weight of everyone's expectations. I did her a mercy. You did yourself a favor. Edward stepped back, putting distance between them. And now you have an empty throne and a hollow crown, because loyalty can't be chained, Matilda. Love can't be forced, and respect can't be stolen. Her face twisted with rage. I am your queen. You will bow to me. Never. The word hung in the darkness between them. Matilda's wolf surged forward, her eyes flashing with its presence. Then you'll stay here until you break, until you forget her name, her face, the taste of her kiss. I'll keep you in darkness and silver until there's nothing left but emptiness. And maybe then you'll understand what I've lived with my entire life. She turned to leave, but Edward's voice stopped her. The bond is still there. Matilda froze. Faint, but present, Edward continued, touching his chest where the mating mark resided. Which means she's alive, injured, distant, but alive. And when she comes back, and she will, you'll answer for what you've done. She's dead. But Matilda's voice shook. No one survives that fall. Saraphina did. I feel her. Edward smiled despite the pain, despite the chains, despite everything. Sleep well, Your Majesty. The crown you murdered for will never sit easy on your head. Matilda fled. Edward sank back to the cold stone floor, chains burning his wrists, and reached for the bond. It was there, barely a whisper, muted by distance and trauma, but undeniably there. Somewhere Saraphina lived. He just had to survive long enough to find her. 3 months later, the wastelands. Saraphina stood on the newly reinforced wall, watching the sun rise over her domain. Domain. The word still felt strange. 3 months ago, she'd been a broken refugee in Jaruis's cottage. Now, the settlement had transformed into something resembling a fortress. The walls stood 12 feet high, constructed from salvaged timber and packed earth. Watchtowers marked each corner, manned by warriors who actually knew how to fight. Children no longer went hungry. Food stores overflowed from successful raids and grateful villages. The Phantom Queen, they called her in whispered rumors that spread across the wasteland. A warrior who appeared from nowhere, liberated the oppressed, and vanished like smoke. They didn't know her name, her face, or where she came from. They didn't need to. The results spoke for themselves. The scouts have returned, Jaruis said, climbing the wall to join her. 3 months of proper nutrition had filled out his frame, and confidence had replaced the weariness in his eyes. The rogue pack controlling Millstone Village is smaller than we thought. 15 fighters, maybe 20. Defenses? Basic. They're relying on fear rather than fortifications. Saraphina nodded, her mind already mapping strategy. We'll hit them tonight. Fast and brutal. The villagers have suffered long enough. You always say that. Jaruis's voice held affection, and something deeper. Something that made her wolf stir with unease. You always insist we move quickly to help others. Because waiting means more people suffer. She turned to face him, catching the way his eyes lingered on her face. Is there a problem? No, just... He hesitated. You carry grief like armor. I see it in how you fight, like you're trying to outrun something, or someone. Her wolf tensed. Jaruis had never pushed before, never questioned her carefully maintained lies about being a refugee from a destroyed pack. His curiosity was dangerous. My past is my own, she said carefully. I know, and I respect that. He moved closer, and her wolf's unease intensified. But I also see how you touch your throat sometimes, like you're searching for something that should be there. A mating mark, maybe? Saraphina's hand dropped from where it had unconsciously risen to her neck. Edward's mark should be there, would be there, once they reunited. The bond remained faint but constant, a thread connecting her to him across impossible distance. If there's someone out there, Jaruis continued, his voice gentle. Someone you're searching for. There is. The admission escaped before she could stop it. There is someone, my mate. But he thinks I'm dead, and I... She swallowed hard. I can't go back. Not yet. Not until I'm strong enough. Jaruis absorbed this quietly. Does he deserve you? The question surprised her into a laugh. More than I deserve him? Edward is... He's everything good I've ever known. Loyal, brave, kind. He would burn the world down to find me if he knew I lived. Then he's a lucky man. Jaruis's disappointment was palpable, but he managed a smile. When you're ready to return to him, my pack will help you. We owe you everything. Gratitude and guilt tangled in her chest. Jaruis was good, honorable, strong, devoted to his people. In another life, another time, maybe she could have... No. Her heart belonged to Edward. Her wolf recognized no other mate. Thank you, she said, for understanding, for not pushing. I'll always push a little. His smile turned wry. It's in my nature, but I know when to stop. That night they attacked Millstone Village. Saraphina led from the front, her wolf singing with savage joy as they tore through rogue defenses. These weren't warriors, they were bullies who'd grown complacent oppressing the weak. Against trained fighters they crumbled. The battle lasted less than an hour. When the last rogue fled into darkness, Saraphina stood in the village square, covered in blood that wasn't hers, and watched the villagers emerge from hiding. Men, women, children, all bearing the marks of starvation and abuse. Their eyes held the hollow look of people who'd given up hope. Until now. You're free, she announced. The rogues won't return. If they do, send word to Jaruis's settlement. We'll come. An old woman fell to her knees, tears streaming down her weathered face. Thank you. Thank you. Who are you? Saraphina almost told her, almost revealed that she was their dead princess, their lost queen, but the words stuck in her throat. A friend, she said instead. Just a friend who's tired of watching people suffer. They gave her supplies, smoked meat, preserved vegetables, blankets, weapons. More importantly, they gave her loyalty. 20 of their strongest volunteered to join her army, swearing oaths that made her chest tighten. On the ride back to the settlement, Jaruis rode beside her, studying her profile in the moonlight. What? She asked. You command like someone born to it, he observed. Not taught, born. Like leadership is in your blood. It was. Generations of alphas ran through her veins, her father's wisdom and her mother's strength combined. My father was a good leader, she said carefully. I learned from watching him. Must have been some father. Jaruis guided his horse closer. We're building something here, Saraphina. He caught himself. That's not your real name, is it? Her wolf went rigid. What makes you say that? Because sometimes, when you're lost in thought, you don't answer to it. His smile was sad. It's all right. Everyone in the wastelands is running from something. Your secrets are your own. But as they rode through the darkness, Saraphina felt her wolf pacing restlessly. The bond with Edward pulsed faintly, and lately it had carried an edge of distress that made her wolf whine with concern. Something was wrong. Edward was suffering, and she was too far away to help him. In the kingdom's palace, Matilda stood in Edward's cell, watching him deteriorate. 3 months of darkness and silver had hollowed him out. He rarely spoke anymore, rarely moved, just sat against the stone wall with his eyes closed and his breathing shallow. But he never broke, never begged, never gave her what she desperately needed. Acknowledgement, affection, anything that proved she was worthy of love. I could give you everything, she whispered, kneeling beside him. Power, wealth, freedom. All you have to do is accept me, choose me, see me the way you saw her. Edward's eyes opened, and the hatred in them was pure. I'd rather rot in darkness." The words stabbed deeper than any blade. Matilda left the dungeons and returned to her chambers, dismissing her attendants with a gesture. Alone, she stood before her mirror and barely recognized the woman reflected back. Crown askew, eyes wild, face gaunt from sleepless nights and meals left untouched. "Why?" she asked her reflection. "Why couldn't I be enough? Why did it always have to be her?" The mirror had no answers. Behind her, the door opened. Arian entered without knocking, carrying himself with the exhausted resignation of a man who'd given up on being acknowledged. "You shouldn't torture yourself," he said quietly. "I'm not torturing myself. I'm torturing him. It's the same thing." Arian moved to stand behind her, his reflection appearing in the mirror beside hers. "Matilda, this obsession is destroying you. Edward will never love you. Saraphina is gone. The kingdom fears you rather than respects you. When will it be enough?" "When he sees me," she whirled to face him. "When someone, anyone, looks at me the way Edward looked at her, the way my father looked at her, the way you look at her memory with more respect than you show me." Arian's face crumpled with pain. "I look at you with love. I've always looked at you with love. But you're so busy wanting what you can't have that you don't see what's standing right in front of you." "You?" Matilda laughed bitterly. "You think I want you? I think you want to be wanted." He stepped closer, and for the first time, she saw desperation in his golden eyes that mirrored her own. "I love you, Matilda. I would die for you. I have been dying for you, slowly, piece by piece, watching you obsess over a man who hates you while ignoring the mate who would give you everything." The words should have moved her, should have cracked the ice around her heart. They didn't. "You're convenient," she said, watching something die in his eyes. "A necessary accessory to legitimize my rule. But you're not Edward. You'll never be Edward." "No," Arian agreed, his voice breaking. "I'll never be a man who despises you. I'll only ever be someone foolish enough to love you despite your cruelty." He left before she could respond. Matilda stood alone in her chambers, crown heavy on her head, and felt the first crack appear in her carefully constructed armor. Later that night, Arian descended to the dungeons. Edward tensed when he heard footsteps, expecting Matilda's return. Instead, Arian appeared, keys in hand. "What are you—" "Quiet." Arian unlocked the cell, then knelt to remove the silver chains. Edward's wrists were raw beneath them, scarred and infected. "You need to leave, now, before she realizes you're gone." "Why?" Suspicion warred with desperate hope. "Because I loved her too much to see she was destroying herself." Arian met Edward's eyes. "I helped her, Edward. When Saraphina fell, I helped Matilda cover it up. I eliminated nobles who questioned the timing, who demanded more thorough searches. I've enforced her cruelty, enabled her obsession, and watched her become a monster. All because I loved her." Edward's rage was immediate. "You helped her murder." "I helped her destroy herself." Arian's voice cracked. "And I can't anymore. Take these." He handed over supplies, food, water, weapons. "Run far and fast. She'll hunt you, but at least you'll have a chance." Edward stared at the supplies, then at Arian. "Why are you doing this?" "Because maybe if you're gone, she'll finally see me. Or maybe I've finally accepted that she never will." Arian's smile was broken. "Either way, staying here means both of us die. You in body, me in spirit. Go." Edward grabbed the supplies and ran. Behind him, Arian sank to the cell floor and let himself feel the full weight of his choices. He'd betrayed his queen, freed her obsession, and likely signed his own death warrant. But for the first time in months, his wolf stopped howling. Matilda discovered Edward's escape at dawn. Her scream shattered windows. She destroyed her chambers, tore tapestries from walls, shattered mirrors, threw priceless artifacts against stone until nothing remained intact. Her wolf raged forward, barely controlled, demanding blood and vengeance. When Arian appeared in the doorway, she knew. "You freed him." "Yes." No denial, no excuses. She should kill him, should tear out his throat for this betrayal. Instead, she stood among the ruins of her chambers and felt only emptiness. Why? "Because I loved you enough to do what you wouldn't. Let him go." Matilda's laugh was hollow. "So noble, so self-sacrificing. Does it make you feel better, knowing you've destroyed everything I wanted?" "What you wanted was destroying you." Arian stepped into the room, glass crunching beneath his boots. "I thought if he was gone, you might finally see me, but I was wrong. You'll never see anyone but ghosts." He left her standing in the ruins. Matilda composed herself with effort, smoothed her dress, straightened her crown. Then she summoned her guards and issued a proclamation that would echo across territories. "Edward has escaped. 5,000 gold pieces to whoever brings him back alive. Anyone who kills him will die slowly." The bounty spread like wildfire. Within hours, rogue packs mobilized. Mercenaries sharpened their weapons. Hunters abandoned other contracts for this prize. And in the wastelands, during an evening council, a messenger arrived with news. Saraphina listened to the proclamation, her body going cold. Edward, alive but hunted, in danger. Her wolf surged forward with desperate recognition. "Mate, protect, find." "We ride at dawn," she announced, standing so abruptly her chair toppled. "Full company. We find him before anyone else does." Jaruis studied her face, understanding dawning. "This is him, your mate?" "Yes." "No point hiding it now. And I will burn down anyone who tries to hurt him." Her commanders moved to prepare, but Jaruis caught her arm. "If we do this," he said quietly, "your identity might be revealed. The kingdom will know you live." "I don't care." Saraphina's eyes blazed. "Edward matters more than any secret." Jaruis nodded and released her. "Then we ride at dawn." That night, 3 scenes played out across the territories. In the forests, Edward ran, exhaustion dragging at his limbs, but determination keeping him moving. Saraphina was alive. He felt it through the bond, growing stronger with each mile. He just had to survive long enough to find her. In the palace, Matilda sat on her throne, gripping its arms until her knuckles bleached white. Her wolf paced frantically, sensing her power slipping. Everything she'd murdered for was crumbling, and for the first time, she wondered if the crown had been worth the price. And in the wastelands, Saraphina mounted her horse as dawn broke, her army mobilizing behind her. Jaruis rode at her right, commanders flanking her, warriors ready to die at her command. She touched her throat where Edward's mark should be, felt the bond pulse stronger than it had in months, and kicked her horse into motion. The hunt had begun, and this time the Phantom Queen was riding for blood. Edward's lungs burned, 4 days running through wilderness that wanted him dead. Rogue packs hunted him in shifts. 5,000 gold pieces was too tempting a bounty. His wounds had reopened, silver burns weeping infection, yesterday's gash bleeding through makeshift bandages. His wolf whimpered with exhaustion, unable to shift. But the bond kept him moving. Saraphina. He felt her through the mating mark, stronger with each mile. She was alive. She was close, coming for him. A howl split the air, too close. Edward crashed through underbrush, no longer caring about stealth. The ravine appeared without warning. He skidded to a halt at its edge, too far to jump. Behind him, 7 rogues emerged from the trees. "Nowhere left to run," the largest said. "The queen wants you alive, but she didn't say unbroken." Edward drew his blade, his only weapon against 7. He'd die here, so close to Saraphina he could almost taste her scent. The rogues attacked. Edward fought on instinct and desperation. 2 fell before the others circled him. Claws raked his back. Teeth found his shoulder. He stumbled, blade slipping from his fingers. Then hoofbeats thundered through the forest, and Aryan burst into the clearing. The warhorse scattered the rogues. Aryan leaped from the saddle, blades singing. One rogue's head separated from its shoulders. Another fell clutching its split belly. "Get on the horse!" Aryan roared. Edward's legs wouldn't cooperate. He collapsed as Aryan fought 5 rogues alone, precise, brutal, unstoppable. A rogue lunged for Edward's throat. His wolf surged forward, forcing a partial shift. His claws tore through the rogue's face. The effort cost him. His vision grayed. Aryan killed the last 2 and hauled Edward upright. "I didn't break every oath just to watch you die in the dirt." They rode hard. When they finally stopped, Aryan tended Edward's wounds. "Why save me?" Edward managed. "You helped her kill Saraphina. I helped her destroy herself." Aryan's hands were steady despite the anguish in his voice. "I loved Matilda so completely that I enabled her worst impulses. I'm here to atone." Edward wanted to hate him, but recognized broken devotion when he saw it. "She'll kill you for this," Edward said. "Probably. But at least I'll die having done one honorable thing. Saraphina's close. I feel her." Edward touched his chest where the bond pulsed urgent and bright. "Then we keep moving." Howls erupted from multiple directions. They crashed through the forest as rogues closed in. Edward clung to consciousness through sheer will, his bond with Saraphina blazing so bright it hurt. The forest opened onto a clearing. Aryan's horse leaped across a ravine and they were surrounded. 20 rogues, then more, trapped. Aryan dismounted. "Can you fight?" Edward slid from the horse, barely staying upright. "Not well." "Then make each strike count." The rogues attacked, and then the forest exploded. Warriors poured from the trees like a breaking wave, 100, maybe more. They hit the rogues with devastating precision. These weren't refugees, these were soldiers, and leading them was Saraphina. She rode a gray mare, dark hair streaming behind her, covered in practical armor. She commanded like a queen. Her army moved at her unspoken direction. Their eyes met across the chaos. The bond snapped. Electric current raced through Edward's body, dropping him to his knees. The muting distance shattered, and suddenly Saraphina was there, in his heart, his mind, his soul. She dismounted while moving, hitting the ground at a run. Edward forced himself upright, stumbling toward her. A rogue lunged. She caught it by the throat mid-leap, her partial shift giving her claws that tore through flesh. She dropped the body without breaking stride. Another rogue charged Edward from behind. Saraphina's blade found its heart, thrown from 10 feet away with perfect accuracy. Then she pulled him against her. "Edward!" His name was a sob and a prayer. "Saraphina." He buried his face in her hair. "You're alive." Around them, the battle ended with brutal efficiency. When silence fell, they still clung to each other. "I felt you die," Edward whispered. "The bond went silent." "I know." She cupped his face. "Matilda pushed me and I fell. But Jaruis found me, saved me. I've been in the wastelands, building an army. Matilda imprisoned me, tortured me, obsessed over making me accept her as my mate." Rage flashed across Saraphina's face. "She'll answer for everything, but first—" She kissed him. The kiss was desperate, consuming. 3 months of separation poured into shared breath. His wolf howled with joy, finally reunited with its mate. When they separated, Edward realized the entire army had gone silent, watching. Aryan stepped forward, crossed the clearing, and dropped to his knees before Saraphina. "Your Majesty," he said clearly, "Queen Saraphina, I kneel before you and beg forgiveness for my crimes against the crown." Shock rippled through the army. Jaruis processed the words with widening eyes. Then he too knelt. "Your Majesty," he said, and the title spread like wildfire. One by one, warriors knelt until the entire army knelt before her. "Rise," she commanded quietly. Jaruis approached. Your Majesty, we are yours. We have always been yours. Saraphina's grip on Edward's hand tightened. Then help me take back what was stolen. The army's roar shook the trees. That night, Saraphina tended Edward's wounds with gentle hands, cleaning infection, stitching the gash across his ribs. I never stopped believing you lived, he said. The bond was faint, but it never broke. I felt you too. Your pain, your despair, it nearly drove me mad being too far away to help. You're here now, that's all that matters. She curled against him on the bedroll. Edward wrapped his arms around her and felt complete for the first time in months. Tell me everything, she whispered. He described the imprisonment, the psychological torture, Matilda's obsession, how she'd silenced nobles, ruled through fear, how Arian had freed him at great personal cost. She's broken, Edward concluded, obsessed with having what you had, the love, the loyalty, the respect. But she can't understand those things can't be taken, only earned. She was my sister. I loved her. I would have given her anything. I know. They lay in silence. Eventually, Saraphina looked up at him with shadowed but determined eyes. When we take back the kingdom, I won't kill her. She deserves it, but I won't become what she is. What will you do? Banish her to the wastelands. Let her atone by learning what real suffering looks like. Edward cupped her face. Your father would be proud. They made love carefully, mindful of his injuries but desperate to reaffirm what had been torn apart. Their wolves joined in harmony, singing recognition and joy. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Edward felt peace for the first time since that terrible night. Tomorrow we take back your kingdom, he murmured. Our kingdom? Saraphina corrected. I can't do this alone. You won't have to, not ever again. At dawn, Arian knelt before Saraphina's command tent as her council assembled. Your Majesty, Arian began, I helped Queen Matilda cover up your murder. I eliminated nobles who questioned. I silenced palace staff. I enforced her tyranny. He raised his head. I offer my life as payment. He saved me, Edward said. Twice. Without him, I'd be dead or back in Matilda's chains. Saraphina studied Arian. Why did you help her? I loved her. Loved her so completely that I lost myself. I told myself I was supporting my mate, but I was enabling a murderer. And you think freeing Edward absolves you? No, Your Majesty. Nothing absolves what I've done. But I hoped it might be a start toward redemption. Saraphina was quiet. Then she spoke with absolute authority. You will serve this kingdom and carry the weight of your choices. You will help rebuild what was broken, protect those you once terrorized, and prove through action that you've changed. If you fail, my mercy ends. Do you understand? Arian's eyes widened. You're sparing me? I'm giving you the chance to earn redemption. Don't waste it. He pressed his forehead to the ground. Thank you, Your Majesty. I won't fail you. Jaruis stepped forward. Scouts report villages are sending warriors, 500 so far, maybe more coming. Saraphina nodded. We march today. I want to reach the capital before Matilda can fortify her position. And when we get there, we end this. Word spread ahead of them. The dead queen lives. Villages emptied as people lined the roads, watching the army pass. Some cheered, others wept. Many knelt as she rode by. Each night, Saraphina held council, listening to commanders, weighing options, explaining her reasoning. When she gave orders, her army obeyed not from fear but from faith. Edward watched her lead and felt awe. The wastelands had forged her into tempered steel. By the time they reached the capital, Saraphina's army had swelled to over 1,000. The city gates stood open. It's too easy, Saraphina said. She's given up, Arian said quietly. I know Matilda. She's realized she's lost. They rode through empty streets. In the courtyard, Matilda waited, She stood alone at the palace steps, crown askew, dark circles shadowing her eyes, already dead inside. "Stand down," Matilda said quietly to lingering warriors. "There will be no battle today." Saraphina dismounted, Edward at her side. They crossed the courtyard slowly. The sisters faced each other across 10 feet of stone. Then Matilda knelt. "I have tasted the power I longed for," she said, her voice cracking. "And if I could choose again, I would choose my sister." Saraphina's face twisted with rage and grief. "You wanted to kill me for power I would have gladly given you." "I know." Matilda's tears fell freely. "You asked me that night if I wanted to take the throne. You offered it to me. But I didn't believe you. I thought you were testing me. You were loved by everyone. Father, the council, the people, Edward. I couldn't believe anyone would choose me if you were standing there shining so brightly. So you pushed me." Saraphina's voice was dead. "You murdered your sister because you were scared." "Yes. I was terrified of being second forever, of living in your shadow. So I eliminated you, and then I realized the love I wanted can't be stolen. The respect I craved can't be forced. I had everything I thought I wanted, and it all turned to ash." Edward felt Saraphina trembling. He took her hand, anchoring her. "You were scared of your insecurities," Saraphina said, each word precise as a blade. "I loved you. Father loved you. But you let fear decide for you. I know. Your sister is dead. You killed her the day you pushed her from that tower. I don't have a sister anymore." Matilda flinched as if struck. "I won't kill you. But you will live in the wastelands where I lived. You'll atone among the wolves you ignored, and maybe you'll become someone worthy of the love you destroyed." "Thank you," Matilda whispered. "It's more than I deserve." "It is." Saraphina turned away. "You have 1 hour to leave. Take nothing but the clothes on your back. If you return, you die." Matilda removed her crown and set it on the palace steps. She looked at Saraphina's back, opened her mouth, then closed it. Some things were beyond words. She walked away alone, and Saraphina watched with dry eyes and a heart carved from stone. Edward pulled her against him, and she finally broke. "She was my sister. She was supposed to stand beside me always. I know, my love, I know." Around them, the army stood in respectful silence, witnessing their queen's grief. The coronation was simple, just Saraphina standing in the throne room, surrounded by those who'd chosen her, while Jaruis placed the crown on her head. "You don't need this," Jaruis said quietly. "You've already proven yourself a queen." "But they need it," Saraphina replied. "Symbols matter, and I will honor both while building something better." Edward knelt before her, and she crowned him Alpha King. Their bond hummed with contentment as he took his place at her right hand. Jaruis and his pack were welcomed home, their banishment revoked. Arian accepted a role as commander of the guard. And in the wastelands, Matilda arrived at a small settlement and began the slow, painful process of learning who she might have been if fear hadn't poisoned everything. Evening fell on the capital. Saraphina and Edward stood on the palace balcony, facing west toward the forests. His hand held hers, their bond singing with perfect harmony. "Are you ready?" Edward asked quietly. "To rule this kingdom, to carry this weight?" Saraphina thought of her father, of Jaruis, of Matilda, and of Edward, who'd never stopped believing in her. "Tomorrow I'll rule our people," she said. "Not because a crown demands it, but because love earned it." Edward pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Then tomorrow begins a new era." Below them, the city came alive again. Lights flickered in windows. Music drifted from taverns. Children's laughter echoed through streets that had been silent with fear. Saraphina's wolf settled peacefully for the first time since that terrible night. And she knew, whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. She had survived betrayal, exile, and loss. Now it was time to build something better. Tomorrow she would be the queen her father always believed she could be. Tonight, she was simply a woman who'd reclaimed her life, standing beside the mate who'd never given up hope. And that was worth every scar she'd earned along the way. The crown sat easy on her head now, because she'd learned the truth her sister never understood. Real power isn't taken. It's given freely by those who believe you deserve it. And Saraphina had earned every ounce of faith her people placed in her. So, what did you think about the story? If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a comment. I honestly love reading your thoughts. I'll be back with a new story soon. Bye for now.